Hello my dear friends of YouTube, and welcome to English Revision on the Chico-chan official YouTube channel. Today we will be going through the first poem in the Power and Conflict anthology, Ozymandias by Percy by Shelley. Today I will show you 4 decent quotes and we will analyse them. We will look at a bit of context and we'll look at a bit of structure. All the stuff that can help you analyse this if this is the given poem or the one you want to compare with. So let's dive straight in. Our first quote here is, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert." Okay, let's get analysing. So, we can first say the word vast could be quite important, trunkless, and I quite like this little bit here, desert with a full stop, and stone is quite good. So, first quote, let's go super quick because we don't want to be here long. We have other things to revise. I have other things to do. I have a life. I have to play Helldivers 2. You know, we have things to get done. So let's do it. Fast. Let me take a deep breath real quick. Okay, now let's get to work. Vast connotes size and strength. Not too much we can say about that. Just make sure the camera's still on that. Oh, good. If you haven't noticed, it's a little bit of a strange setup. You are currently balanced on 20 volumes of Chainsaw Man with a phone hanging over the edge. Because you know what? I haven't got the money to do these sort of things. But that's okay. You don't need money to get grade 9s. All you need is working hard. And that is exactly what we have here. Next word. Trunkless. Now, a lot of people do not know what the word trunk means, which is okay. But a trunk is a body. I have a trunk. Pretty much everyone has a trunk, I like to think, as long as you're still alive. It is just your abdomen, you know, the bit with the nipples and the big muscles and yeah, the bit in the middle. So, this pair of legs do not have a body attached. They're just 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone that stand in the desert. How interesting. Now, the word stone. Stone connotes strength again. We're already seeing a link here. Strength and vast and stone. Now, so where does stone come from? Mountains. Get that down. Okay, mountains. What do mountains connote? Strength. This is a pretty strong looking statue. Mountains can also represent nature and immoving. Because they don't move very much last time I checked. Okay, next bit. Desert. Now the word desert, yeah, a desert is quite vast. See that over there? The desert is empty. Okay, now, desert is a good word, but I quite like the little full stop here. This full stop can also explain a little bit. But what could the full stop mean? Well, let's look at our context for that. Let's move you down a bit. Beep, beep, beep. There we go. Context. So, what we have here for context right now is just a name. Ramesses II. Now, not a lot of people know who Ramesses II was, which is completely fine, so I will tell you. Ramesses II was the real name of the real Ozymandias. So, this strange fella with a statue in the desert was a real fella. And Ramesses was not a nice guy. He was very dictatorial, egotistical, and self-obsessed. Please write all of that in your essay, and quote me. So, this Ramesses fella, he loved people building him statues and temples, and really anything that would help you worship him, because he thought he was just this incredible guy, God's gift to the world. You know, he had over 100 children. I mean, I don't really see the appeal behind that, but you know what? Whatever floats your boat, lad. No one was stopping him. So, let's go back up here. Now we know that Ramesses, who is Ozymandias, was a pretty scary bloke. Everyone kind of had to listen to him, or they'd, you know, probably get eaten by some sort of animal they had in Egyptian deserts. I don't know too much about them. Dinosaurs is my specialty. Anyway, full stop. Okay. Well, this is an example of enjambment, which is a piece of punctuation midway through a line, breaking it up. So, another big deep breath. You know, there's a lot to say about this poem. It's great for something so short, but we'll look about that bit next. So, this full stop, well, it forces you to take a breath, which is what I would love to be doing a little bit more of. but that's okay. So, it's a pause, it's a breath, it's a stop. No matter what you have to do, if you see a full stop, you stop. Okay, well, why are we stopping? This doesn't seem like an incredible bit to stop. It's not a very long sentence. Okay, well, what if? There's another pause for you, emphasis. This could be Ramesses forcing us to stop and admire what's left of this statue. He would be like, look at these two vast and trunkless legs. Although originally he probably wanted them to have a trunk. Because, who builds giant legs in the desert for fun? Not many people. I can't recall myself ever doing the same. So yeah, he's just getting the reader to stop and consider it. It's like, oh wow, this guy's got a statue. He must be quite important. Secret, he's not. Because where's the rest? You don't just build a single statue. You'd have a civilization. You'd have people building you things. Well, none of them are there, are they? So, let's move on to the next quote. Move you down a little bit. Yep. Okay. Half sunk, a shattered visage lies. Okay. Half sunk, shattered visage. Right. Quite a lot we can say here. Let's start with half sunk. Okay. Half. Not completely. Only half. Self-explanatory. Okay. Well, why is it only half sunk? Could it be not sunk? Could it be completely sunk? Well, half sunk can represent how only some legacy is there. I'm back. Hello again. I just had to go do something a little bit out of breath now, which is just brilliant. So let's get continued. So we've already just looked at half sunk and how half, and there is still some of Ramesses' legacy left. Perhaps not as much as he would have liked. Because you could say that possibly this statue that has these trunkless legs and this shattered visage here were all part of one greater thing, yet all of it's just crumbled away. There's nothing left, it's just in pieces, like this pen perhaps. So let's look at the next bit. Shattered. Now shattered is a pretty self-explanatory word. It's broken, it's destroyed. Okay. Visage though. Visage is a little bit trickier. Not a huge amount of people know this word, which is completely fine. I didn't until I started studying this. Visage is a face. That's all it is. So a shattered visage is a shattered face. I've got a face. You've got a face, I hope. I'd be a little bit worried if you didn't, but you know what? It's okay. Slenderman wants to watch my videos. That's fine. Who knows? He might need to sit his English GCSE soon. Might struggle, but you know what? I'd be very impressed. So let's go to our next quote. Make sure the camera is centered. Yep, okay, cool. This one is a very classic, famous one. My name is OZYMANDIAS, King of Kings. Of course, the whole thing's a little bit longer than that, but we don't need the entire third of the poem to get some marks. So let's have a look-see. We'll say my and King of Kings. This one's a bit easier. Okay, so this little line here that's written on the pedestal is very interesting. Just make sure my speech marks are there. Okay, my. He starts this line off with my. It's not there was a man called Ozymandias or King Ozymandias lived here. It is my name is Ozymandias. He has to start it with my. It's I. It's personal pronoun being used here. So immediately starting off this with my is quite suspicious. It's like, okay, are you really that important? Why does this line have to start with you? I mean, come on, man. Grow up. Now, let's go to the next bit. King of Kings. That's a very cool title. If I was called the King of Kings, I'd be very happy. You know, there was a person called the King of Kings. Just the one. Very long time ago. And this person was none other than Jesus Christ himself, the one and only. So, perhaps using this title of King of Kings, is this Ozymandias or Ramesses II fellow once again showing, look at me, I'm positively godlike in how powerful and impressive I am. Look at me, I'm the King of the Kings, I'm as good as God, I've got huge structures and statues. Well, you know that he doesn't, because later in the poem it says, nothing beside remains. So, there is nothing there. So clearly it did not work. Clearly he is not God. He is just some grumpy old pharaoh man with over 100 children. Which sounds like it sucks. Anyway, our final quotation. Let's move you down again. Whoop. There we go. And we'll move on to structure after this. We'll keep this video a little bit short because last time I recorded this, it ended up being probably a little over half an hour long, which is a bit excessive for 4 quotes and a bit of context and a bit of structure. You know what? It's okay. You can probably hear me breathing here as well, which I do apologise for. It takes a lot of energy speaking constantly about something like this, especially after a long day of school. Anyway, round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. And that's where the poem ends. So, let's analyse it. Decay, colossal wreck, boundless and bare. Focus on how I say that. Lone, level, sands stretch. There's a lot here. This is a very good quotation. It is quite long. And to be fair, you don't need to know the entire thing. You can sort of just say colossal wreck, boundless and bare, lone and level sands. Either of them work. So, let's have a look. Decay links quite nicely back to shattered. You know, destruction. Very cool. Colossal wreck. Destruction again. Colossal. That's size. And power. You know, if you're colossal, you're pretty strong. Bodybuilders are pretty colossal. I would not want to fight one of them. Would not want to fight Ramesses. Okay, maybe now that he's, entombed, but not when he was commanding thousands of slaves to build him things. That does not sound fun. Anyway, boundless and bare. Boundless and bare. This is a very good example of using... Oh god, I can't remember what the word is now. Give me 1 second. I have it around here somewhere. The sound effect. The pause happening once again. Just had another few things to deal with. But now we can continue. So, let's go back to boundless and bare. This is an example of a plosive. Not explosive, just plosive. And a plosive is when you have a repeated, quite violent sound. Here we've got boundless and bare. You could say, explosions of blue and brown. I don't know, explosions aren't usually blue and brown, but tell you what, they were in the Chainsaw Man movie. So there you go. That would be an example of a plosive too. An explosive. Get it? Right. The lone and level sands stretch far away. Lone and level, that's a repetition there. It's not really a plosive because it's not very aggressive, but it is a repetition of the L sound. And speaking of repeating sounds, sands stretch far away. This is not plosive, it's something very similar. This is assonance. Assonance. Double S, because double S, it can be a few more. It could be like a slithering snake in the stretching sands, hissing S sounds. And what can S's be? They can be like burning, sizzling, because of how hot it is in the desert. Also though, if you want to go a little bit deeper, this is when we look at our structure, because this links quite nicely. So, this poem here, Ozymandias, is written as a sonnet, which I've already written down here. And a sonnet has the conventions of 14 lines, you can count it if you don't trust me, a volta, and some sort of rhythm like iambic pentameter. So we're going to go through this, and then we're going to flick back real quick, and then that should be it, because this is starting to get a little bit longer than I expected. So, 14 lines, self-explanatory, the poem is 14 lines long. Now a volta, not a lot of people know what this word is as well, and that's cool, I didn't either. So a volta is when a poem suddenly changes. Something switches, this perspective changes, the opinion from the reader changes. Here in Ozymandias, this happens on the line, nothing beside remains, is where I think it is, but it is up to interpretation. Obviously we can't ask Shelley himself because he's not around anymore. He died a little bit before I was born, about 1822. Me personally, it wasn't that early on, but you know, I'm still going. So, this falter here, probably nothing beside remains, because this is when we go from Ozymandias talking about himself being the king of kings and how mighty he is, and then just, well, there's nothing actually there. So, screw that guy. Now, iambic pentameter. You might recognise this from Macbeth, you know, with the witches, double, double, toil and trouble, that sort of thing. It's a rhythm being created. It is a collection of 10 syllables, with half of them being emphasised. So we call these 5 feet. So in these lines, like, two vast and trunkless legs of stone, you know, you hear the rhythm, right? It's like, bah, 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 when really it's just a line. So yeah, there's a little thing you can focus on. Now, we're going to analyse iambic pentameter even more. Okay, there's a rhythm. There's a rhythm of feet and syllables and meh, 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 meh. Okay, what does that mean? Well, look how the line is close to the context. The context and the structure link very nicely here into the topic of slavery. This might seem a little bit shocking at first, but it is. It's meant to be. Ramesses did not build these temples and statues by himself. No one's got the time for that. He simply used a gigantic army of slaves to do it all for him. Okay, well that's not very nice, but how does that link back to iambic pentameter? Simple. The rhythm. Slaves don't just go all over the place, they are kept in order or bad things happen to them. So this rhythm of two vast and trunkless legs of stone could represent them marching as they go to build all these different things for Ramesses, and they're being forced under the sizzling sun from the assonance, creating this picture of almost torturous dictatorship throughout this poem, despite nothing beside remaining. Almost as if everything Ozymandias did was for nothing, or for nature to take over it all. Now, nature is a good topic. Nature links to our context. So we're going to come back here. I'm going to talk about romantic poets. Now, this is not Romeo and Juliet. This is no gross, smoochy, smoochy. We do not want to read about any of that. That's gross. That's for adults, not little boys. So, a romantic poet, though, has nothing to do with anything of that. Oh, not at all. Thank goodness. I do not want to read that. A romantic poet talks about nature. Nature and time, more specifically, the power of both, and how nature and time will always be stronger than humanity, and no matter what we do, we'll always be weaker than nature, how it controls everything that happens. You know, the lone and level sands, the half-sunk visage, you know, doesn't last. But you know what does? Nature. No matter what we do, nature will always reign supreme over us. And with that, I think we have covered everything Ozymandias has to offer if you want to write about it quickly, because we don't want to be here for hours. So, thank you all for getting through this slightly torturous video. It was a struggle for me to make as well. I'll take great pleasure in rewatching myself explain these things. And that'll be all. Berg